Hey everyone, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. And again, we have so many news, but I have so little time, so let's just jump straight in. First things first, I've been promising to give you a map update, so I will do it this time despite the fact that I cannot go in depth. In the Kursk region, where Ukrainians are holding, here Russians are not having a good time at all. They have been struggling. There has been multiple countless assaults going on in the Kursk area, and all of them were dismantled by the Ukrainian armed forces. Moreover, Russian propaganda channels started claiming that the fights are ongoing for the settlement that they supposedly captured already a while ago. So things are definitely not going the Russian way in the Kursk region. So that is the good situation. Then the situation around the northern area here. We had a bit of an unfortunate situation that happened a little while ago. So here, what happened is, I'm going to try to zoom in. So you can see the red is the Russian controlled territory and the green is Ukrainian controlled territory. And here is actually a river, the Oskil River, that flows right in this area. And that river has been used for a while as a natural barrier to defense against Russians. So while it is true that Russians kind of try to move along this river to try to overcome this Sinkivka stronghold that I've been telling so much about if you've been following any of my updates, now they've tried to attempt a new tactic. So they said, well, why don't we just kind of cross the river, create a bridgehead, and then maybe collapse this situation for Ukrainians on the other side of the river, because we clearly cannot just advance along the river, as it has been failing for months and months and months now. They have been able to establish two bridgeheads on the Ukrainian side. But by this moment, we already got reports that first it was this bridgehead that was taken out by Ukrainians, and then it was this bridgehead that was taken out by Ukrainians. So at this moment, all of the latest reports suggest that the Russian forces have been removed from this, it's technically a right side, but I'm going to call it the west side, just so it's easier for you. So from the west side of the river, they have been removed. It's great. It's helped stabilize the situation incredibly. Situation around the Klishivka, the southern Chasiv Yar, is still tense. Russians are still having a little bit by little advances, but it's definitely they are not having the supplying forces that they need, and we're going to touch upon this just a bit later. Then the main efforts around Kurakhove, right over here. Here we see that Kurakhove pocket is closing. And if you have been following my updates, again, Ukrainians are doing an incredible job. The closing of this pocket was supposed to be like over a month ago. At least I was expecting it. Yet we are still here. There's still forces here. They're still fighting. Ukrainians doing a great job. And Russians are not able to pick up any major tempo. Situation around Velika Novosilka. Here the dangerous situation happened again. So while Russians are pushing towards Velika Novosilka and they're trying to storm the settlement, it's a quite an important stronghold for Ukrainians, definitely would help secure this region. The dangerous situation happened with Russian breakthrough on the north towards Novi Kamar. This created a problematic situation as this basically cut off majority of logistics towards the Velika Novosilka stronghold. So thankfully Ukrainian reinforcements got involved and they have pushed the Russians out of this Novi Kamar settlement. So therefore this stronghold is now resecured, so to say, and it stands strong. Otherwise, Russians continue pushing. Ukrainians keep defending. Ukrainians are continuously trying to secure as much land as possible while also not standing there and dying until the end. And here we have a new drop that happened just recently, and you know what it's going to be. Now, I have shown you this graph before, but it seems that I need to show it again because the fresh one was dropped this time. It has the dates for the November, which was supposedly November, was the month, like if you believe Western media sources, like all the mainstream propaganda media, I'm sorry, propaganda, just media, they have been claiming that Russia is having unprecedented month, that they are advancing, they're crushing Ukrainian defenses, they're grabbing land, they're absolutely incredibly advancing. Yeah. So for people that see this graph for the first time, it is the territory in Ukraine, and the red and purple is Russian-controlled territory. So you can see at the start is from the year 2022 by month, and then by the end of this is the current Russian mega offensive. So you can see how the red part is how much Ukrainian territory Russia control has increased. I hope you can see the change that happened, because it can be problematic. So what I'm stating is, guys, news and media and everyone else will try to sell you fear. They will try to sell you narratives. They will try to play on your insecurities because you care about Ukrainians. They will try to push you into this thinking. It was like, oh, maybe Ukraine needs to some kind of negotiate. No, just give Ukraine more weapons. Even with the drip feeding that the Western allies are doing for Ukraine so far, they're able to completely almost stop Russian forces. At least that's what the data says. Another important development is obviously what is happening in Syria. Syria, big Russian investment, huge Russian investment. A lot of the Russian clout, a lot of the Russian investments and Russian standing in the world really depends on Syria. And nothing so far is working. So far, the Assad forces are literally cannot really stop any advances from the rebels. And I want to correct myself. In my last video, I said there is no one here to support. And you pointed very correctly that obviously there are yellow, which are the Kurds. And it's true that they're not perfect. It's true that there is some of the tendencies. Nothing in this area is definitely perfect. But I definitely take some of my words back that, yeah, if you would want to kind of consider supporting anyone in this region, potentially, yeah, Kurds can work for you. They have been supported by the US before, but I want to underscore, just because we are supporting someone does not make them good. Please always remember that. The fact that we're just supporting someone does not instantly make them a saint or a very good person. There are issues with Kurds at all. And no, your personal opinions, like I met a Kurd guy and he was cool, does not count. But yeah, rebels has taken over control of the city of Hama, which is great, and they're advancing more south. It's really bad for the Assad forces. We are looking what's going to happen with this city right over here. So this city, I believe it was called Homs, and that is the big deal, because if this city is cut out and then the rebels are able to advance towards the west, they will be able to cut out Russian bases, and that's going to be pretty devastating, because Russia right now is trying to supply this grouping a lot. There's a whole discussion about why Syria is important for Russia to be held, but again, we have no time. I want to answer this question, which came from Uli. And Uli is, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, by the way. So the question goes, about 2 months ago, I explained that Ukraine had set up new brigades consisting of men who had come out of mobilization. However, they had not yet been deployed at the front. The assumption was that they would be deployed as an assault unit, which we have. Now, we hear, for example, from General Reisner from, I guess, Austria, for example, that chain reaction could be imminent in the southern Donbass because the front line is on the verge of collapse because some of the Ukrainian units only have 30-40% of their strength. Has your assessment of the troop situation in Ukraine changed? How do you currently see the situation? Does Ukraine have shortage of men or only shortage of equipment? Kind regards, Uli. Okay, let's break this down. So first things first, this is a complex topic. There is no like a simple answer here. So if you hear someone just saying is like, oh, Ukraine has troubles, oh, they just need to mobilize 18-year-olds and it's going to solve their problems, you can call their bullshit right away, because that is not indeed the solution. To put it in a perspective, so if you know anything about Ukrainian and Ukrainian media, you know about the guy named Yuri Butusov. Yuri Butusov is a reporter, and he's a very passionate reporter. He goes to the front lines. He was in the trenches when they were stormed. He was like basically hit in a vehicle when they were driving on the road. He is a guy that spent on the front line with the warriors like a lot. And he's a huge critic of Zelensky. He despises his guts. Like, he absolutely hates Zelensky. And he critiques, and like every problem that military has, he blames it on Zelensky. So that guy, he actually talked recently addressing this, like, does Ukraine actually has the shortage of men? And he's saying is like, no, we do not. And this is, I'm just kind of underscoring because obviously Zelensky was saying, no, we're not having shortage of men. A lot of data analysts have been saying that Ukraine doesn't have shortage of men. They have plenty of men. They have plenty of people to come in. They don't need the 18 to 23-year-olds. They have the people. They need the proper units. But Butusov is, because he's such a big critic, what he was saying is that they're not having the shortage of men. There are men. What is not having there is a proper command. So the biggest issue that Ukraine is right now facing, you can say there is three big things, I would say. The thing number one is the problems with the weapons supply. This is what President Zelensky asks from the allies, and he underscores this very clearly. He states for already a long time now that there were up to 14 brigades of people that are ready to go essentially from the front line, but they have no equipment. 14 brigades. In his latest interview, he stated that it was now 11 brigades, so potentially some of them got supplied. But what I want you to understand is some people think that to get people to frontline in Ukraine means one thing. You go, you mobilize people, you put them in a uniform, and then you send them to the front line, and then they fight. That is not how army works. An army works to achieve certain goals. To achieve certain goals, they need to have within the certain chain of command. So they need a certain unit. They need a certain officers. They need a proper logistics setup. They need a proper weapons setup. They need a lot of these moving parts set up. And a lot of that is just not being done potentially because there is no equipment. So when we're talking about whether there are people for Ukraine to send, yes, there are, even from without the 18 to 23-year-olds. What there isn't is that you cannot just take a person and be done with this. You need to put him into unit, you need to put that unit on the transport, and you need to make sure that transport has all the necessary parts for that transport to move and shoot. That is the formed units. So if Ukraine has the manpower that are ready to go but has no ability to form these units, it's like they are not having the manpower. I want to underscore again, just by conservative estimates, Ukraine has by this point drawn on about, and hear me out very precisely on this, about 10% of its mobilization potential. Even if you take this panic spreading narratives that are stating there's like hundred thousands of deserters for Ukrainian armed forces, firstly, a lot of them are deserters because they are forced to fight with no resources. I mean, like, we knew, like, when we're talking about, like, Ukraine not getting enough resources, what do you think it means? Because for me, that means that a guy on the front line is, instead of having a proper position with artillery support, with mine support, with the proper supply of equipment, instead he's sitting there in a trench with like Kalashnikov and 2 mags. And he's supposed to stop this Russian offensive with aviation. And because that is how Ukrainians fight when they don't have supplies. That is the actual reality on the ground. Watch every video, any video from Ukrainians from the front line, and you will understand that it's exactly how it is. Incredible bravery. Yet we're stating is like, wow, you're sustaining so much losses in Ukraine. Why don't you mobilize more people so they can go more in trenches with 2 magazines and a Kalashnikovs? No, they need to be properly supplied. And a lot of people, I don't know if you can imagine this or not, don't want to die. So even if you take that, even if you take the desertion rates and so on, it is still relatively small to the total force of Ukraine. It is very, very small. Ukraine has enough mobilization potential even with the current rules. What it's missing is the supply that they can be prepared and be sent as a proper units. Secondly, is a problem within Ukrainian command. This has been an ongoing problem, which I don't really report because we cannot really contribute to it and doesn't really concern us that much. But the problems with Ukrainian command has been there for a while. My perception is that this is because Ukrainian commands, like a lot of the parts of the war is a lot of science. A lot of the battles and like your distribution of forces plus logistics, they have certain calculations. So there is a part of like what's actually happening goes in there, like into that calculation. And for Ukrainians, for a longer time, a big part of their army was experienced veterans that knew what they're doing, and they were able to work essentially on minimal resources, on minimal equipment, but they were still able to do it, to make it work. The problem is that army is gone. Majority of current Ukrainian military is now mobilized people, and it's a whole new military with a lot of the officers coming from different backgrounds and maybe having some issues with reporting and reporting the actual truth. There is a lot of problems in Ukrainian military, and they are working on solving this. Just recently, I reported on a big removal of and replacement of the head of the ground forces of Ukraine to a general that has been experienced and well recognized in the Ukrainian military. And then the third problem is the amount of people in an existing brigades. A lot of new people that got mobilized, they put in these new brigades, so they train with these new brigades, but the old brigades don't get supplied the new forces. Now, there are two arguments that I've heard against this. The first one was that in Ukrainians, they've just had this weird system where brigades were essentially would be hiring on their own the additional people into their brigades. But the second one I feel is a little bit more right. You cannot just again send people to those brigades that are on the front line, because the brigades on the front line has been fighting for a lot. So it would be much more relevant to maybe prepare some new brigades and exchange them on the front line. So the whole brigade that was now defending right now needs to be, can go on relaxation. Again, with the given that there are serious problems in Ukrainian command and Ukrainian command structure and how their army is operating. Right now, Ukrainian army structure is very rigid. It needs a lot of change, and that change is happening. And then finally, addressing the question of Ukrainian frontline collapse. So firstly, I'll point you again to this graph where the Ukrainian lines are collapsing and Russia is taking all over Ukraine, just to kind of remind you where we're talking with a baseline. But the second more important thing that I want you to understand is when a line collapses, and I've explained this plenty, when a line collapses, the enemy force can go through the line, and then prepared reserve units that enemy has can just get mobilized and abuse, like exploit this opening inside of the enemy front line, and then they can start pouring in by the thousands into that opening. The truth of the matter is, the awful truth for Ukrainians, that Russians have created those openings specifically on the Pokrovsk direction right over here. They broken through Ukrainian front line, created openings, but no reserves came in. No reserves of Russian poured into that breach. This is where I say that a lot of the Western analytics are based on the theoretical understanding of war, which is not wrong, but that theoretical understanding of war means that there is like certain level of reasonability. In reality, Russia has been running short on reserves. They've been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing their manpower. And while they have enough of manpower to sacrifice them in these human waves to achieve these slow advances that they're getting, even if they create a breach in the Ukrainian front line, they just do not have the additional forces to pour into that breach to completely collapse Ukrainian front lines. Moreover, we've seen that Ukrainians have been adapting more and more, and if they're having more of these breaches, they are now trying to get more people on the front line to deal with those. So I feel that while Russians are advancing, and they will continue advancing until Ukraine gets proper supply of resources, I feel that this is, again, the argument is extremely theoretical, just because these breaches, the collapses of Frontline that they are mentioned by this Austrian general, they already happened. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop it here. I'm going to record the second part, which is about the same size as the first one, and I'm going to release it tomorrow. So please participate in our fundraising campaigns for the Ukrainian Armed Forces. People have reported that they want to pay with PayPal, but they cannot so far. I just want to let you know we're working on this, and this campaign will run until we get it done. So if you wanted to help fundraise this, but you have PayPal, don't worry. We're working on this. We're going to get it fixed. Participate, links in description. Watch this video, watch the video tomorrow, and I will make even more. We have so many news, guys. I love you. Slava Ukraini, trust in Ukrainian Armed Forces, and I'll see you next time.